Hey guys, Torcus here. So in this video we're going to be talking about Shaman, checking out all of their cards for this upcoming Ashes of Outland expansion with the context of the entire set so we can get a full view of all of the cards in the actual way that they're going to be when the expansion is released. I've also theorycrafted 4 deck lists which you can check out at the end of this video, and I have definitely crafted my reviews around the fact that I have already seen how I will be building decks when the expansion happens, so we'll be able to tell just how much inclination I have towards running each card in what kind of decks and stuff like that. I'll be honest, Shaman is not getting a lot of great cards, I'd say. We'll be seeing that in a second, but they are also rotating a lot of really good cards that have been staples for them for a while. And given the fact that they haven't been good in the meta anyways after the nerf to Galakron, I think that we're not going to be seeing much Shaman. But regardless, we're going to look at the cards anyways, so let's hop into it. So the first card we have is Bogstruck Clacker, 3 mana, 3/3, Battlecry, transform adjacent minions into random ones that cost 1 more. So this is a evolve minion that lets you evolve 2 things that you have. I think it's a little slow for that kind of thing. We saw Evolve Shaman being really good during the Doom in the Tomb event when we had the actual evolve spell came back. We still have mutate and stuff like that in standard. The main thing though is that Mogu Flesh Shaper got nerfed, and that really hurt the entire evolve idea, because that's the best minion to be evolving for sure. So I tried to make an evolve deck. It ended up, the best way that I could really make it was to make it a Murloc deck. So it's basically just a Murloc deck with some minor evolve synergies, and with this card and the next card we're going to see. I think that it will not be a good deck. I think it might even be better without the evolve stuff and you just run the Murloc stuff. And Murloc Shaman hasn't been making a huge impact on the meta either way. This doesn't excite me at all. I'm going to give this one 2 stars. Hopefully one day Evolve Shaman can be a thing, but we don't have the cards for it right now. Then we have Bogspine Knuckles, 5 mana, 4/2 weapon. After your hero attacks, transform your minions into random ones that cost 1 more. So each time you attack, you get an evolve effect on your whole board. It's kind of like you get a free evolve with each attack. 4 mana, 4/2 weapon is kind of a normal thing you'd expect. So the 1 extra mana, you're paying for that first evolve. So you're kind of getting the second evolve for free. But of course, 5 mana setup for this weapon means that you won't have the ability to combine this with anything unless it's much higher mana turn. So you could do something like play your Desert Hare on turn 8 and then play this with it. That's really slow, to be honest. By then, you could probably have already lost the game. At least the second one, you're not paying any mana on it. You already have it set up, so that's fine. I think this at least looks better than the Bogstruck Clacker in a few ways, even though the Bogstruck Clacker has its own stats on its own body. But of course, until we have more cards that really make sense in the Evolve archetype, we just don't have enough like token generators and cards that have higher mana costs for their bodies and stuff like that. So this one is also getting 2 stars. Then we have Totemic Reflection, 3 mana, give a minion +2/+2. If it's a totem, summon a copy of it. This is so incredibly bad. You want to play this the turn after you play your hero power and hope that your totem doesn't get killed for free before you get to use this. And then you get some really insubstantial minion. This is 1 star. It's like so bad I can't even believe they printed this card. Maybe there's more totem synergy in Wild or something, or maybe we'll get some more later. But like, this card is insanely bad. I can't believe it. Shaman did not deserve trash like this. Then we have Serpent Shrine Portal, 3 mana, deal 3 damage, summon a random 3-cost minion, overload 1. So this is quite a good card, I'd say. You're getting to deal 3 damage, which is a good effect in you're able to deal with threats and potentially go face in a more aggressive deck as well. And getting the random 3-drop gives you this tempo push at the same time. So I definitely like this card. So I did put this in an aggro overload deck, and it's going to be very different now that we're losing Thunderhead, which was such a good overload synergy card, and a lot of these other cheap, accessible overload cards and stuff like that. I mean, it's just good in general. I also ran it in all the other Shaman decks that I created. I do think this is probably the best card that Shaman is getting this expansion, and I think the overload aggro Shaman with this card is probably going to be the most likely deck to work. I think none of the Shaman decks are going to see play because Shaman is just going to be so weak. We're losing so many good options and getting not enough good new ones. So I have to give it 2 stars because eventually it'll probably see play in Shaman decks once Shaman is viable as a class. But as Shaman is not viable as a class, this can't see play if the class it is in is not seeing play. Then we have Lurker Below, 6 mana, 6/3, Battlecry, deal 3 damage to an enemy minion. If it dies, repeat on one of its neighbors. This is like a fire elemental that can't go face, but can hit a minion with 2 less health, and potentially hits more minions when it does that effect. It's not even honestly that great if it goes off. Like, it might be a pretty big board clear with a body, but I think in most cases it won't be that. Didn't even manage to put this in my Highlander Shaman because I just saw that there were better options than this. We already have actual board clears and stuff like that in the deck. I don't think this is ever going to see any play. I'm giving this 1 star. Then we have Vivid Spores, 4 mana, give your minions Death Rattle, resummon this minion. I couldn't really think of a way to run this in a deck. It's too expensive for its effect, and you need decently sized minions to feel happy about dropping this on your board, which obviously that just seems like a win more effect. You're hoping that your board sticks, and then you play this so that your board sticks even more likely. Like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't think this is ever going to line up in any deck. I'm giving this 1 star. Then we have Lady Vosh, 3 mana, 4/3, spell damage +1, death rattle, shuffle Vosh Prime into your deck. And Vosh Prime is 7 mana, 5/4, spell damage +1, Battlecry, draw 3 spells, reduce their cost by 3. So I tried to find a way to make like a Malagos combo deck with this or something, but there's like no way that's possible because you'd have to make a minion-based deck with a few damage spells, and then this, and then hope that the damage spells are still in the deck or something like weird like that. So that's not how this is going to work. But I do think it's just a fine card on its own. Like, you're getting this well-statted aggressive body for 3 mana, and then you get the second part that can draw you a bunch of spells to spam out. Just being able to draw the spells seems fine in a lot of decks, but I do like it a lot in a aggressive deck with burn spells, where you can potentially throw a lot of burn at your opponent all at once you get that second part. And one of those good burn cards you could have is that Serpent Shrine Portal. You got lightning bolts and lava bursts and stuff like that. So honestly, I think it kind of lined up in a lot of the decks that I built, so I put it in basically every deck. And I think this will be a big player in that aggro overload Shaman if it ends up being a thing. But I don't think it will. I don't think any of these decks will. So I'm giving it 2 stars. Then we have Marsh Spawn, 3 mana, 3/4 elemental, Battlecry, if you cast a spell last turn, discover a spell. So because of this effect, it's really not going to be active on turn 3 almost ever. You try and come up with a spell that you're playing on turn 2 in a Shaman deck. So because of that, this is just a 3/4 if you play it on turn 3. It's any other time that you play it, you might expect to discover a spell, which is probably in a slow control shaman, so I did build like a big spell shaman with Feoris and stuff. This one in there, because sure, why not? You're not really having much in terms of minions in that kind of a deck. So this seems fine, but the decks that it goes in just seems a little weird. I don't think any deck that it'll fit into is just going to make very much sense. Maybe eventually we'll have a list that lines up where you're going to be casting spells on a regular basis and actually be able to trigger this on turn 3 and stuff like that. Discovering a spell is definitely not a bad effect at any point, so if you play it off curve, you're not feeling too bad, and maybe you pick something that fits into the turn that you're playing it on. But of course, because of Shaman State, for right now, it's getting 2 stars. Then we have Shattered Rumbler, 5 mana, 4/6 elemental, Battlecry. If you cast a spell last turn, deal 2 damage to all minions. I believe that's supposed to say all other minions at this point. For some reason, they still haven't updated this yet. But in-game, that should be how its effect goes off. So I think that's a fine effect. If you can line it up, it's pretty nice to get that board clear. I don't really know where you're putting this other than that big spell shaman. And it has that weird idea that you're running so many board clears in the deck already, you don't necessarily need another board clear. But this does look fine if your opponent sets up a relatively small board after you've cleared them before, perhaps, and then you play this, and then it's entering onto an empty board, basically, because you clear out everything else. And it's just a well-statted minion. But I don't know if it's later on, when we actually have legitimate shaman decks, is this gonna be in those decks? It's just another awkward card, I think. I'm giving this 2 stars. And the last card we have is Torrent, 5 mana, deal 8 damage to a minion, cost 3 less if you cast a spell last turn. So honestly, when I was building my shaman control deck with all the big spells and stuff, your initial thought was to run this, but eventually, honestly, I didn't even end up having this in the deck, not even 1 copy. It's just, I don't want it to be cheaper if I'm getting big spell synergy and stuff like that. And it's surprisingly difficult to find a way to line up these spells last turn thing and everything. Also, I just think the 8 damage on a single minion is not especially important in Shaman. We've already got Hex as a single target removal. And we also have a lot of large wide board removal that can deal with lots of threats and stuff like that. You're often not going to play this for the full 8 damage, even if you did play it. So if I can't fit it into a control deck for Shaman, I don't think it's ever fitting into any deck for Shaman. So I'm giving this 1 star. Alright, so that's all the cards. So let's check out the deck lists that I've come up with. So this first one is that Overload Murloc Shaman that I mentioned. It's got basically every Murloc thing that you need to worry about, with the Tide Callers, Mermies, War Leader, and Angler. We've got Soul of the Murloc to keep us sticking to the board with all these Murlocs and stuff. We've got a couple of things that benefit off of the wide board with the Storm's Wrath and the Bloodlust. And then we have this Evolve stuff with Mutate and Flesh Shaper, Bogspine Knuckles, and Bogstrot Clacker. And we run the Desert Hare just because it synergizes with that stuff. But I think because of the nerf to Flesh Shaper, it might be hard to line it up. And all this other stuff is just really weirdly costed, and it's going to be awkward to fit in. So I don't think this deck is going to work. But if you want to play an Evolve Shaman, this might just be the best way to do it, because I tried and tried to come up with a different list for Evolve. But the Murloc Shell just seemed the most solid way to get a lot of minions on your board. And any other way that I could think of, Shaman just doesn't have the resources for it anymore. So I think this is the way to go. If you want to evolve, might as well take a shot at it with this. Then we have our big spell Control Shaman. We've got basically all the things that we've seen in this kind of a deck before. We already know that it wasn't a very good deck when people were trying it when Fist of Rawden came out. But we've got it here anyways, and we've got that Fist of Rawden. We've got King Phaoris to try and get these more extra threats. I tried to include a few more minions in here to try and give us more things to do. But we got Siamat, we got Walking Fountain. Walking Fountain can keep us alive later on. And Eye of the Storm is that big, huge spell with the 5/6s. So you can get a 10 drop off of it with Phaoris, and also play it later and get a lot of tempo that way. I've just always found that it's a really awkward card because playing a 10 mana play in Shaman is hard with all the overload, and then you overload again because you played it, so it's pretty rough. We've got these play to spell last turn minions that will hopefully have a positive impact on the deck. And I just ran Meg Therodon because screw it, why not? If you're going to clear some boards, hopefully you get a 12-12 out of it, right? So, got that in there. That might be cool. It kind of fits the theme and archetype of the deck. And I also just ran some Doomsayers and some Bone Wraiths because they seemed like good ways to stall out, keep you alive, get these Hagathis schemes more powered up and stuff like that before you send them off and use them on your opponent. So I think this is a pretty solid list if this is what you want to go for. But again, I don't think it's going to be a good list for win rate. It just might be better than some other ways that you could build it. And that's about as high praise as I can give it. Then we have my Aggro Overload Shaman. Aggro Overload Shaman's seen quite a bit of play lately, but Thunderhead is gone, and that was a really strong card and really why the deck was so good. So without it, kind of having to try some different things. We've still got stuff like Doomhammer and Rockbiter as a huge finisher potential option. I've got that Lady Vosh to grab some of these spells so we can send them to face. But some of these early minions are really iffy. I had to include stuff like Evil Totem, which is good, but it's like more of a value tool. Hopefully the lackeys that you get off of it won't be stuff like Draconic Lackey, which is going to be a little bit too slow for you and stuff like that. I had a Loot Hoarder in there because we don't have enough card draw, and I just need more early game minions. Like, I have 2/2 drops, and it's Evil Totem and Loot Hoarder because I couldn't come up with better options than that. So, you know, okay. And then we have Unbound Elemental as a minion that benefits from these overload effects. Vicina, even though we really don't go very wide, but I don't really have better options, so I just chose to put that in there. We have Cumulo Maximus, which hasn't really seen play up to this point. I know everyone hyped it up when it was getting revealed, but it's kind of a little too slow and hard to fit into a turn. But we're going to try it anyways in this deck. Hopefully it gives us some damage over the top that can finish out a game. And we have Squall Hunter as the 4-mana 5/7, almost a 4-mana 7/7, with that spell damage, so maybe it can have enough of that spell damage. And if you combine it with Lady Vosh, that's even some more spell damage. Maybe you make these burn spells enough to end the game on that. So I think it's an interesting list. It just really doesn't put much on board, and it's going to be hard to keep up when you don't have enough minions to contest your opponent's minions and stuff. But maybe we just put enough damage face that the game ends quickly. We'll see. But again, not confident in this or any other Shaman deck. This last one is Highlander Battlecry Shaman, which we've seen a decent amount of recently. Not a deck that has a very good win rate, to be honest, but it's losing a lot of important cards, so I figured I'd build one of these and check it out, because we're losing stuff like Shutterwalk, we're losing Spirit of the Frog and stuff like that, all these important cards, Zentimo. So we just have a few different battle cries. We've got the quest synergy. I've got a Hagatha in here, Swamp Queen Hagatha, because we really don't have much in terms of options anymore. Walking Fountain to give us the heals. We got Zephyrus and Dragon Queen, of course, because it's a Highlander deck. Got Bandersmosh in there, which hopefully will turn into something impactful. And we got the whole Galakron package with Dragon Pack, with Corrupt Elementalist. I've always found it a little bit hard to finish your Galakron in a Highlander deck, even though one of your cards is double invoking, it's still difficult. But hopefully these Highlander synergies and the different battle cries that we have in here will be able to carry the deck to do something of significance. But yeah, just kind of depressing looking at this deck and seeing all the stuff that they no longer have anymore, and we just got to work with what we got now. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like if you did. Comment down below what you think of Shaman. If you think there's any deck that they'll actually have make it in the meta, and if you do think that, what deck is it? Please subscribe if you'd like to see more of my content in the future. We're going to finish out all of these classes for all of these full final card reviews. And please check out my stream. It's at 7 p.m. PST every weekday, always on there playing Hearthstone. So if you want to see some Hearthstone gameplay, definitely drop by. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one.